Hi there, everybody, and welcome back to Utility Sports. And today we have a fun video here for you. We're taking a look back at the 2007 NBA draft class, how it played out. We're going through the lottery here and actually reselecting what I would have done in the position of the GMs. Obviously, I'm taking a little bit of a look at what their rosters look like, too, the outlook for where they're at. And I understand, too, some of the reasons on why they went with who they are. So we're going to actually break some of that down, explain why they went a certain way. Obviously, with hindsight, it's always 2020. We can see who the better players have been. So we're going to look at it. We're going to analyze which teams made what moves. Obviously, we're going to look at how bad some of this draft process was for some teams. So let's jump right into pick number one here with the Portland Trailblazers. Obviously, they selected Greg Oden. And there's a lot of reasons why, actually. There was a lot of pressure from the media to select Greg Oden. He was supposed to be possibly Tim Duncan. He was getting comparisons to. He'd also gotten comparisons to Alonzo Mourning, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, and more. And at this point in time, too, remember, this is in 2007, the center was the position you wanted to build a team around. You wanted a guy who could grab rebounds, score from the low post. That was where the NBA was won and lost a lot of the time. Greg Oden was a physical beast, a real 7-footer, 235, 240 pounds as a rookie. Coming in, he was going to be a dominant big man for the Blazers. I definitely understand why they had looked at it like this, but that's not to say that everyone believed actually that Greg Oden was worthy of the number one pick. Some analysts, some people thought Kevin Durant should have been the first overall pick, one of those most notably being Bill Simmons of The Ringer. He has said that Kevin Durant should be the first pick. He didn't trust Greg Oden's health, which he was ultimately correct about. Greg Oden is such a big what if. I think if he would have been healthy, he would have been a great player. Not better than Kevin Durant, but still very great. This is the easy one to remock here. Kevin Durant would go first overall to the Portland Trailblazers like this. An absolute heartbeat. It would take the Blazers no time to make that decision with the hindsight that Kevin Durant is who he is, what we know about Greg Oden, how his injuries kind of played out. Just didn't work in Portland. I think maybe in a few other places he could have gotten healthy, could have gotten right. I think just didn't work out for him. Missed the whole first season. His rookie season actually started his second year in the league, like we've seen with players like Ben Simmons. So then that leaves pick two here with the Seattle Supersonics. Where do they go? And this is where things start to get a little bit more difficult. You have to look at some team needs when you're looking at who you're going to mock to them. And remember here at this point, KD is now off the board. And with Greg Oden's injuries, he will not go here. On actual draft night, Greg Oden would have been the second overall pick had the Blazers went with KD. KD is off the board to the Blazers, though, here. And with hindsight, we're not going to take Greg Oden second overall. We're actually going to go with Marc Gasol, who is pick 48 by the Los Angeles Lakers. Gasol has won a championship. He's won a Defensive Player of the Year award, multi-time All-Star. Really, really successful for the Memphis Grizzlies. Remember, he was a big part of the trade for his older brother, Pau Gasol, that brought Pau to the Lakers. Won back-to-back championships with the Los Angeles Lakers. Gasol here, Marc Gasol, rather, was a big part in the deal for Pau Gasol. I think the Supersonics, with how Marc Gasol's careers played out, would have taken him second overall if Kevin Durant was off the board. He's a winner, excellent passer, quality defender down in the low post. Remember earlier in his career, too, that's where basketball games were won and lost, down in the low post. Very solid defensive player in that area. Obviously, we've known him to be able to stretch out to the three-point line now, too. And really, just a really quality center. This class, I'm not saying it's the strongest class. KD very, very much makes up for this class, actually, in a lot of ways. But I think Gasol would be picked two by a slim margin over this next guy, who did actually go pick 3 in the real draft. That is Al Horford. The Atlanta Hawks selected him third overall this year in 2007. And in the redraft, I think he goes third overall yet again. Looking at the Atlanta Hawks, too, their roster, they had Joe Johnson, Josh Smith. They also brought in Mike Bibby for the 2007-2008 season. I think Al Horford makes a lot of sense. It really filled in that center position for him, for them, a guy that can stretch the floor. Gave them a little bit of different options. Also could score in the low post earlier in his career. That's something he had been known to do a little bit. And I think this pick makes a lot of sense, not only at the time, but to run it back and do that again. I think Atlanta would be very comfortable grabbing Al Horford a second time, bringing him in. They also have another pick later on in this lottery here. And there's a little bit of a shakeup there with them, so they could optimize their roster a little bit more around Horford, Joe Johnson, Josh Smith, and Mike Bibby. At pick 4, we have another team that made the right decision there on draft night. They went with Mike Conley, 4th overall. And then in the redraft, I would have them do that again. Now, the interesting thing is here, they still have Pau Gasol at this time. They had not made a trade yet for Marc Gasol, on draft night. So technically, Conley's with Pau Gasol now instead of Marc Gasol, but I still ultimately think that's the right move for them. They'd probably end up moving Pau Gasol again anyway, but Mike Conley would be the building block. He's shown to be a really, really good point guard during his prime. Now he's starting to slow down a little bit with the Utah Jazz, but he's still a starting level point guard in this league. He's had a phenomenal career, was very, very important to Memphis when they were going on some of their playoff runs. They went to the second round a few times, and I think they would like to have him back here, knowing how his career's played out. I think he would come back to Memphis in a heartbeat, and I think that this makes sense for the Memphis Grizzlies to run that back with them. Now at pick 5, we have the Boston Celtics, and actually this pick got traded this offseason to the Seattle Sonics. They had selected Jeff Green, and now the interesting thing here, this deal was for Ray Allen. Obviously, Ray Allen was a Supersonic prior to finding his way to Boston to join the Big Three, which happened to be Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and himself, Ray Allen there, also joining Rajon Rondo, the point guard, who was very young at the time. But the Celtics here, I'm actually going to have them select Jeff Green again, and my reasoning for that is the Sonics would be most valued in grabbing Jeff Green at the time. He had the most trade value, and their focus was putting on a bunch of teams on trade notice to try and bring in a star player. They ultimately did that, bringing in Ray Allen. Jeff Green had a ton of value going into this offseason. He was a touted prospect, someone that many teams actually had looked at, thought of him as a versatile wing, which ended up being true. He's had a very good career. He's now with the Brooklyn Nets, has jumped all over the place, but has had many, many solid seasons. And remember, earlier at pick 2, we had them grab Marc Gasol. Very imperative that they come and grab a wing here. Marc Gasol and Jeff Green are not going to turn around the Sonics team immediately, so that would put them in a position to still grab Russell Westbrook and James Harden in future years as well. Both of those players needed to grow a little bit, but I think that is ultimately the way that Seattle would want to go, and I think Boston would have been interested in drafting Jeff Green for his trade value later on yet again. At pick 6, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, and they actually drafted Yi Jianlian. And for those of you who don't know, he's a 7-footer, played the power forward position, wasn't really strong enough to play the true center at this time of the NBA, but he could stretch the floor, shot over 34% from 3 in his second and third year in the league. However, he did only spend one season with Milwaukee. He actually, before even signing with the Milwaukee Bucks on his rookie deal, had asked for a trade, wanted to go to a place with a higher Chinese population. Milwaukee obviously is not that destination, but Milwaukee did not grant him that trade request prior to signing his rookie deal. He did play his first year there, even got a Rookie of the Month in the East for the month of December in 2007, but that ultimately does not impact the way that they would go. They would go Joakim Noah here, and I know what you guys are maybe thinking. Yes, they had Andrew Bogut at this time, who was only a 3-year pro, but with the hindsight being 2020, we know that Andrew Bogut never really figured things out again after his injury to his knee. Never really became that high-level player again, was more suited to be a complementary piece. Joakim Noah has been a Defensive Player of the Year, an All-NBA member in the past, also a multi-time All-Star and multi-time All-Defense. The Milwaukee Bucks would not let Joakim Noah slide past 6 here, even with the roster construction. They would find a way to play Joakim Noah off the bench early and then quickly move Andrew Bogut in what it would be Joakim Noah's second or third season in the NBA. The Bucks would have gotten their franchise center with Joakim Noah this way. Obviously, he was very successful with Tom Thibodeau and the Chicago Bulls, and I think there in Milwaukee, he would have brought some defensive stability, something that Scott Skiles really needed as the head coach there in Milwaukee. At pick 7, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, who ended up going with the Florida prospect Corey Brewer, played for Billy Donovan on that Florida Gators team with his teammate Joakim Noah. And I think one really big thing about the Minnesota Timberwolves here is the Kevin Garnett trade. They had made the move. Kevin McHale, the executive for the Minnesota Timberwolves at the time, with his good buddy Danny Ainge, decided to trade Kevin Garnett for Al Jefferson, Gerald Green, Sebastian Telfair, Ryan Gomes, and 2 first-round picks. Not really the package you should be getting for a former MVP, in my opinion. However, that was what the deal was at the time. They opted to go with Corey Brewer here, but I think a better situation for them would have been going Thaddeus Young. Not only is Thaddeus Young a better player than Corey Brewer was throughout his career, obviously a more prolific scorer, a better passer of the ball, someone who's more comfortable handling the rock, but the positional fit makes a lot more sense too. He could play that 4. Al Jefferson came back in that trade for Kevin Garnett, was playing the 5. Randy Foye played the 1. Here we see rookie year Corey Brewer. But also Gerald Green, obviously the high flyer, would have maybe gotten a better chance to really cement himself as the starting small forward. Him and Corey Brewer kind of went back and forth, and I think the competition ultimately didn't help either of them. I think having Thaddeus Young play at the 4 instead of Ryan Gomes, and I think playing Gerald Green at the 3 would have been maybe a better situation for this Wolves squad. Again, not optimal to be trading an MVP player for the package that they did. If hindsight was 20/20 on that, they would say no to that trade. I would hope. I don't know if Kevin McHale was just doing his buddy a favor there in Boston. Remember, Kevin Garnett didn't even want to be traded. So it's a very unique situation there. Obviously, that trade helped the Boston Celtics win a championship in 2008. Worked out quite well for them, bringing in Ray Allen and KG in the same offseason. However, the Timberwolves here, going with Thaddeus Young, just a much better decision in my opinion. At pick 8, we have the Charlotte Bobcats. They selected Brandon Wright, a center who was a really good role man, athletic, just sustained quite a few injuries, had his career shortened, didn't play a full number of games pretty much any season. And in a redraft, I'd give them Rodney Stuckey. He was a combo guard, went to the Pistons, a quality scorer, was scoring about 13, 14 points a game for his career. Actually pretty solid numbers, and this Bobcats team really badly needed to score more. This year, 2007-2008, what would have been Brandon Wright and Rodney Stuckey's rookie year, they ranked 19th in the league in scoring. I think that they would have needed to be a little bit more efficient offensively. Their defense was right around 20th as well. Just really a subpar team, actually. And in order to improve, it would have been on the shoulders of Rodney Stuckey in the half court to get them into more sets. Remember, they were playing guys like Matt Carroll at shooting guard. Rodney Stuckey would have been a for sure improvement over those guys. And I think in the long term would have been a better selection as well than Brandon Wright ended up being. His tenure in Charlotte did not go for a very long time. At pick 9, we have the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, they had selected Joakim Noah. In the redraft here, I'm going to mock them Wilson Chandler. He's a two-way wing. Found a lot of value actually in New York. He was a big piece in the trade for Carmelo Anthony a few years down the road. They grabbed him at pick 23. At pick 9 here, he's moved up a lot. Moved up 14 spots actually to the Chicago Bulls. He'd fit in with Tom Thibodeau, can space the floor a little bit. A versatile wing. Defensively can guard a number of positions. I think him and Luol Deng could have worked very well together actually, with Wilson Chandler coming off the bench early, and then later on the two of them maybe playing a little bit together at the 3 and 4 positions. Obviously, remember at this time they were playing more conventional fours. We had Carlos Boozer there for a while, Taj Gibson as well, with Joakim Noah. But looking at that team, they did need a center. However, without a true quality center yet on the board, I think Wilson Chandler made the most sense. At pick 10 now, the Sacramento Kings had selected Spencer Hawes. He's a floor spacing big. Just didn't really fit as well in the NBA. I believe he ended up scoring about 6,000 points or so in his career, in what I believe was an 8 or 9 year career. So not terrible, but a better situation for them would have been Aaron Aflalo. Started out really, really slow for the Detroit Pistons in his career, was averaging about 3 points a game through his first 2 years. But the Kings didn't need instant impact. They had Kevin Martin still. They had John Salmons, another guard in their backcourt. They also had a variety of bigs with Brad Miller. Also had Ron Artest at the time. Just a collection of players that were, pretty solid yet. They could run that roster for a little bit longer before they ultimately traded Kevin Martin to the Rockets for Tracy McGrady. That did not work out well. Aaron Aflalo, the timeline with his development really would fit well with the Sacramento Kings. When he got to Orlando, he started to average about 16 to 18 points a game for a 3-year stretch. That's right when the Kings would have really needed a scorer. Aflalo would have been that for them on the wing. They could have still grabbed Tyreek Evans a year later, played him at the point guard with Aflalo on the wing. I think Aflalo is the best fit here. He moved up 17 spots actually here in the reselection. Obviously, this class not very strong, like I had mentioned earlier. At pick 11, we have the Atlanta Hawks, who are on the board for the second time. Remember, we had them stick with Al Horford at pick 3. This selection, they had grabbed AC Law, and quite frankly, that was not the right selection. AC Law averaged 3 points a game for his career, maybe 3 or 4 points per game. And in this redraft, I'm going to have them grab Nick Young. Swaggy P himself went pick 16 to the Washington Wizards in real life. However, here he goes to Atlanta. And remember, I had mentioned that I had Mike Bibby, Joe Johnson at shooting guard, Josh Smith at the forward position, also Al Horford. They're looking for another guy who can play on the wings, stretch the floor for these other players who are ball handlers, scorers. And obviously, they're now post player in Al Horford. Nick Young is that shooter that can come in and do this. I also thought about Marco Bellinelli here, but they both have actually the same 3-point percentage in their career. Both of them are just, kind of interchangeable in a lot of ways. I think Nick Young is what is a more intriguing prospect at the time. That's why I would mock him at 11 to Atlanta instead of Bellinelli. At pick 12, now we have the Philadelphia 76ers. They had selected Thaddeus Young, obviously a very good selection here. We had seen him already go at this point. And in a redraft, that's right, I said it, Greg Oden goes pick 12 to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I know his career very injury-riddled. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be if he went to the 76ers. However, I think that there's a shot that if he was in a different place, he could have maybe figured things out. And when he was playing and he was healthy, he was a beast. For the Portland Trailblazers, his second year in the league, he was playing 24 minutes a night, was averaging over 11 points a game, over 11 rebounds a game, and his per 36 numbers, he was averaging over 3.5 blocks a game. He was absolutely dominant when he played. Actually, correction too, he was only averaging 8 rebounds. His per 36 was averaging 12 rebounds a game, rather. But he was very efficient when he did play and when he was healthy. Greg Oden would be the selection here for the 76ers. Badly needed a center. I believe they were starting Samuel Dalembert at this point in time. They had Andre Iguodala on the roster. They had Lou Williams on the roster. They really needed someone who could anchor the paint. Thaddeus Young was a very good selection at the time. But with him off the board, I think Greg Oden is actually worth the risk here at pick 12. Obviously, we know it didn't work out, but in a different situation, he is still a pretty big what if, in my opinion. And I think that the Sixers would roll Greg Oden at pick 12. And you'll probably see why here as well. With pick 13, I have the New Orleans Hornets drafting Corey Brewer now. And if you don't think that the risk on taking Greg Oden at pick 12 is better than grabbing Corey Brewer, I'm sorry, but it is. I'd much rather take the risk on Greg Oden, especially knowing Corey Brewer, how his career played out when he was healthy anyway. They had selected Julian Wright. Did not work out. He had a very short career in the NBA. Most recently, he's played in the Big Three League. Didn't even play very well there. Corey Brewer goes here. He's an athlete, someone who's a high flyer, quality two-way player for a little while. And I think his fit next to Chris Paul and Tyson Chandler, along with David West and Hedo Turkoglu as well. Or not Hedo Turkoglu, sorry, Peja Stojakovic. I've got the wrong European. But yeah, Peja Stojakovic. You bring in an athlete, fits pretty well with that team. You need someone who's going to be able to, be athletic there, cut to the rim, catch lobs from Chris Paul. I think that Corey Brewer would actually be a pretty good fit in New Orleans. And at pick 14, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. They had selected Al Thornton, and instead in this redraft, I mocked them Marco Bellinelli, the shooter from the San Antonio Spurs. Had a pretty solid career. Has moved around quite a few places. I see him going to the Clippers here to be a building block. At this point, they had Elton Brand and Chris Kaman. They definitely needed a wing player. And I don't even think Al Thornton was that terrible of a pick. Very short career. But his second year in the league, he did average 17 points a game on somewhat efficient scoring as well. Al Thornton wasn't a terrible pick. I just think Marco Bellinelli, the long-term career is a little bit more valuable. This has been the redraft here. The one interesting thing I want to point out again is Greg Oden. If he had been healthy, very possible he would have been the second best player in this class. I firmly do believe that. That's my takeaway on it. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please hit that subscribe button if you are new, or smash that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys in the very next video.